Shalom. First and foremost, I want to say call hello, Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakah HaKodash. We send double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone. Much peace, love, and salutations to you, Akim, out there pushing the word of Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai in sincerity and truth. It's the brother Ariala. And on this lesson, I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but we always talk about the famine of the word. We always talk about how, Satan is getting ready to roll. But, basically increased censorship is coming. We always talk about how before war, the different sides have to control the narrative. The different sides have to produce propaganda. And we see that at its height right now, leading into the presidential elections and escalating wars that are happening in different regions from Russia to the Middle East and all the surrounding areas. And so, we're prepared for this. This is something that the apostles, elder bishops, and all the brothers have been talking about constantly, that there's a crackdown coming. And they're showing it within the legislation that they've been passing and everything that they'll be doing. So I want to read a couple scriptures, get a couple articles and points, and Lord willing, this is edifying. This is the book of Romans, the 13th chapter, and the 11th verse. It says, "And that knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believed." Okay, we know that we're heading headlong into the depths of prophecy. And so it's happening. And that things are getting ready to pop off, The scripture, verse 12 says that the night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness. Let us put on the armor of light. Okay, and so it's needful that we're continuously in this word, that we're fellowshipping amongst the brotherhood, glorifying the name of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, and getting in the mindset of, being spiritually discerned. All right, putting on that armor of light, all the armaments that we read about in the book of Ephesians, and throughout all the scriptures. All right, putting all on those characteristics, so we can be prudent in that time. All right. Revelation 12 and 12, we always read the scripture that says, "Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time." And we see the legislation and the propaganda and the censorship, social media censorship especially, building up. These are the type of measures that they're getting to roll with. And they're also starting to do more restraints and doing more restraints on your ability to communicate, on your ability to speak out on certain topics wherever. Brothers was doing the lessons on T-Mobile, how they $500 fines for people doing this or doing that. We got more of that type of propaganda being pushed out. They're coming down with great wrath because they know they have a short time, and a big part of that is making sure that they can control the narrative. I want to play this right here.
Tucker Carlson. Okay.
With Tucker Carlson, because he just did an interview with Putin. Now, I'm taking notes on that right now and taking clips, and Lord willing, I'll be able to finish that today and take all the clips that I want to highlight, and me and the brother Required Quam can go over some of the things that have been said. I'm only like maybe an hour into it, and I've already pulled like 4 clips that are extremely relevant to prophecy. So, but that being said, Tucker Carlson was catching all types of heat for even doing this interview. And some of the things that were coming out of the EU were interesting. Patrick Ben David kind of mentions it here, so I want to play this clip.
To Russia to sit down with Vladimir Putin. Rob, did you find a shorter version of the clip of what Tucker says? If you can find a shorter version of it, the world lost their minds when this man announced that he's going to Russia to sit down with Tucker Carlson and to sit down with Vladimir Putin. The amount of reaction that people gave is absolutely wild. Let me read the Newsweek story. And some people don't even want him to come back to America, by the way. Here we go. Tucker Carlson could face sanctions over Putin interview. Newsweek story. European Union lawmakers, such as former Belgian Prime Minister Guy Verhofstadt, are...
Now, sanctions is extremely egregious for being just interviewing someone. being a journalist. You mean you're gonna cut my ability to move around and transact because of a conversation? This is the type of stuff that we're going to be seeing more and more and more often. Now, we always talked about what they did to Trump, what they did to Alex Jones, what they did to Kanye West, so on and so forth. How these are leading examples of them being able to completely cut you off. And we talk about how with the MOTB systems, they'll have complete and total control to do this at an instant. We're seeing the propaganda being pushed to let you know that, hey, if you don't follow the narrative that we set, you will be put out of the system. Okay?
Contemplating sanctions against Tucker Carlson following his revelation of an upcoming interview with Russian Vladimir Putin. He characterized Carlson as a mouthpiece for Putin and former President Donald Trump, advocating for potential travel bans within EU countries. Can you imagine this?
Mm-hmm.
That he cannot travel to EU countries. The EU's External Action Service, EAS, would require concrete evidence to present to the European Council for any sanctions against Carlson, a process that could be prolonged due to the balance of direct sanctioning authority for individual Parliament members. Critics highlight concerns over Carlson's sympathetic portrayal of Russian policies and his platforming of Putin, accused of war crimes, suggesting that such actions could compromise journalistic integrity and warrant sanctions. Now, Rob, if we can play a part of the clip.
So it says compromise journalistic integrity. What does that even mean? How? Basically, you can compromise what we've been pushing down your throats to believe. We want to cut that off.
Clip of what Tucker is saying while he's in Russia. Go ahead and play this clip in and we'll react to it.
And they do that mostly by omission. For example, since the day the war in Ukraine began, American media outlets have spoken to scores of people from Ukraine, and they've done scores of interviews with Ukrainian President Zelensky. We ourselves have put in a request for an interview with Zelensky, and we hope he accepts. But the interviews he's already done in the United States are not traditional interviews. They are fawning pep sessions specifically designed to amplify Zelensky's demand that the U.S. enter more deeply into a war in Eastern Europe and pay for it. That is not journalism. It is government propaganda. Propaganda of the ugliest kind, the kind.
Boom. And so he's recognizing that what we see in mainstream media is propaganda, not even just mainstream media, also in alternative media, which is something that I always warn brothers to watch out for. These people get paid to post these videos and for people to consume it. So they will just put up anything. With no fact checking, clickbait titles. So we have to be mindful when you're on TikTok, when you're on YouTube, when you're on Rumble, when you're on anything, that these alternative media sites also have to get paid. So they're pumping out as much information as possible to get as many clicks and ad revenue as possible. Both sides of the coin is propaganda, and they're just pushing out things. So you have to understand that, okay? Now, with all this being said, we always read the scripture here in Amos 5:13. It says, therefore, the prudent shall keep silence in that time, for it is an evil time. All right? And so we're coming into a time to where you're going to be cut off from open social media communications like we're doing right here on YouTube. You already see there at certain points, pretty much like every quarter, YouTube does a complete wipe of videos, and brothers pretty much, are the highest target. Why? Because we link the prophecies with the news, and they don't like that. You could talk about the news, but once you link it to Bible prophecy and really go in depth, that gets scrubbed from YouTube, right? And so we're constantly have to make new channels and everything like that, and we have to watch the words that we say. Keywords can get you clipped, and it's going to come a time to where even saying anything like this will get you jailed, will get your bank account frozen, will keep you from traveling, like we see happening with potentially with Tucker. So the prudent are going to be keeping silent in that time because it is an evil time. We're coming into the height of censorship, okay? And it's a part of prophecy. It's a part of what's yet to come. Now, this was sent into the chat. This is from the peoplesvoice.tv. Israel to punish anyone who questions October 7th official narrative with 5 years in prison. Absolute insanity, right? It says Israeli lawmakers are moving forward with a bill to punish anybody accused of questioning the official narrative from the Netanyahu government about details of what happened on October 7th under the new law. Anybody who dares to question or downplay the government's version of the events will be punished with up to 5 years behind bars. The prudent gonna have to be silent in that time. Absolutely insanity. And that's just one of the things that we see out here. Okay. Now, this is from AP News. It says there's a wave of new bills to define anti-Semitism. In these 3 states, they could become law, right? So it says lawmakers in more than a half a dozen U.S. states are pushing laws to define anti-Sim, triggering debates about free speech and bringing complicated world politics into state houses, right? So they're clamping down on these things more and more and more and more, right? Isaiah 29 and 21 talks about that make a man a offender for a word and lay a snare for him that reproveth in the gate and turn aside the just for a thing of not. The Most High is going to put these people down eventually. But we're going to go through a time of Jacob's trouble, which, Apostle Har, deemed this year the hopeful year of Jacob's trouble. Well, what you think is going to be happening during that time? Massive censorship and punishment for censorship, okay? And it's going to move more quickly than what people understand, all right? This is in truthout.org. They put out an article and it says, who's behind push for states to codify weaponized definition of anti-Sem, right? He goes into more of an in-depth, I'm not going to read this thing. I'll probably just read it. I'll touch on it. I'm going to skip down. Well, I'll read the first paragraph and I'll skip down and read a little bit more. It says, on January 31st, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp signed House Bill 30 codifying the definition of anti-Sem as formulated by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance into state law. According to legislation, law enforcement agencies in the state must consider the definition in the course of their enforcement, as the definition explicitly references criticism of Israel. Pro-Palestine activists fear it may open them up to prosecution, and even hate crime charges simply for organizing against the ongoing genocide in Gaza or occupation of Palestine in general. Skipping down. In a growing attempt to repress criticism of Israel, Georgia is the latest of 10 states to adopt the IHRA definition of anti-Semitic law. Although many of the states that have recently adopted or are considering adopting the definition are doing so in the aftermath of October 7th, the Israeli government and pro-Israel organizations in the United States have been working with lobbyists to silence Israel's critics for years. And just like they said, they're weaponizing it. They're using it as an ability, to create an ability to go after people, to go after someone who's speaking against the mainstream narrative. If you speak against this mainstream narrative, we will lock you up. We will find you. We will keep you from being able to move around. We will, we will repress your ability and your freedoms, your ability to do whatever and your freedoms. This is what's happening. This is why we talk about that famine of the word. Okay? Amos 8 and 11, behold, the days come, saith the Lord power, that I will send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread, nor thirst for water, but of hearing the words of the Lord. This is what we're seeing happening. And they shall wander from sea to sea, and from the north even to the east, and they shall run to and fro to seek the word of the Lord, and shall not find it. These are the type of things that are becoming. Your ability to access certain types of information, especially the truth, is going to be repressed and controlled. They're moving forward with an agenda to go into hardcore censorship. We are in that time. We are in that day. We are in that moment in prophecy. So, although it can be annoying to have our channels banned or potentially be reproached and oppressed because of speaking truth, it's okay. The scripture said that they will hate us for speaking the truth. The scripture said that they were going to come against the men of the Lord in that type of way. So we praise Yahweh Shem Yahushua. Why? Because his words are faithful, his words are true, and we know it's bringing us closer into salvation as they pick up and ramp up and we go into Jacob's trouble. So I just want to touch on that. I'm not going to go over too much. Like I always say, please, I can add scriptures, any scriptures that come to mind. Those of you who are new, make sure you pay attention to the chat and the comment board, because there are going to be way more scriptures added as brothers come on. So with that being said, call halal Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua Ba'ashem Rakakodash. Double honors once again to the apostles and elders, great millstone. Much peace, love, and salutation to y'all. I'm out there pushing in sincerity, man. Shalom.